I'm Amog Matthews, and welcome back to me completing my community service hours. The judge told me it was either this or teaching inmates how to read, and I don't work well with the incarcerated. Anyway, much like myself, the USPS has gotten into some trouble lately. Since being taken over by one of Trump's appointees, Louis DeJoy, the U.S. Postal Service has suffered a severe decline in the rate of on-time delivery of first-class mail. So don't worry, your invite to that super cool party on the comment did get set. It's just taken a super long time to get here anyways. And if you do get invited, please tell me, because I'm going to be real butthurt about it. The U.S. District Judge Stanley Bastian ruled that the decline in timely service is clearly aimed at voter disenfranchisement. Given the increased role the USPS will play in this year's presidential election, Bastian wrote, "It's easy to conclude that the recent Postal Service changes is an intentional effort on the part of the current administration to disrupt and challenge the legitimacy of the upcoming election." So in other words, DeJoy is taking the joy out of American people by giving them shitty mail service and trying to ruin their chances at voting a fascist orange balloon out of office. Additionally, Louis DeJoy intended on restricting additional or late trips for mail-in delivery and prohibiting overtime for workers. Two federal judges actually had to step in and rule that the Postal Service has to wait until after the election to implement changes due to the monumental effect they could have on voting. Just like how my parole officer has to step in when I want to leave the set, we shouldn't do it. American Postal Workers Union President Mark Diamondstein explained that, quote, "The states run elections, not the Postal Service, but the Postal Service is here to move those ballots, and when mail gets slowed down, it becomes a concern everywhere. This delay in the election process will leave room for mistakes when collecting votes." Now, is there a way to aid the dying Postal Service? I'm glad you asked, Mr. Teleprompter, sir. For the Postal Service to survive, it is pertinent that it commercialize itself to appeal to a younger generation, and it's already started following in the footsteps of your favorite influencers. No, unfortunately, that does not mean USPS OnlyFans, but a boy can dream. I want to see those scantily clad envelopes, those beautiful manila curvy envelopes, those perfectly cut stamps. We do, however, have USPS fan cam.
So Millie shit, ho, so Millie shit, yeah, dicks up when I step in the party. Y'all may do wanna feel on my body, and if I take 'em, bitch, I won't.
The Postal Service instead stuck to merchandising. Pop Sugar put together a list of highlights. We've got Halloween costumes, Christmas ornaments, puzzles, USPS-themed note cards, and even a male dog costume so your dog can turn into your ballot when the Postal Service gets defunded. The list doesn't stop there. We've also got a fashion section to go through. We've got T-shirts, long-sleeve tees, fashionable sweaters, even crop tops that the New York Times raved about. I think I could pull that off. I have the curves, and I think males would look good on me. Like all merchandising influencers, the USPS hit up a trendy LA fashion designer for a collab in the form of a Fred Segal. According to Pop Sugar, the money made off Fred's designs goes directly to the Postal Service. Now you can be fashionable, trendy, and achieve your activist aesthetic for Instagram clout. Like Kendall here, with Coke, or Pepsi, one of the two. If you don't have enough dough to drop on a $125 sweater, to up your activist aesthetic game because Emerson stole all your cash, I understand. You could also buy stamps, but no one mails letters anyway. It's kind of how we got into this mess in the first place. Even if you're not mailing anything, you could always collect stamps to get close to the aesthetic of your grandma's house. You could. In any case, you have better mail than your ballot for November 3rd. But all of this begs the question, what do the current USPS workers, the American electoral system, and myself have in common, you ask? Very funny, writers. Very funny. I should have never told you guys. Anyways, now that we've talked about the desperation of the USPS, my erectile dysfunction, now let's talk about how outdated voting is, specifically how it relates to voter suppression. Take the Electoral College, for example. Now, I'm a pro-historian, so I know what I'm talking about. We normal citizens vote for a presidential candidate in a state-specific issue every 4 years. Our opinions are weighed heavily for our state questions, whereas our say for the president is lumped into what is called the popular vote. Hopefully, y'all knew what that was. Your parents did pay a lot of money for you to go to college. But from there, the state's appointed electors pick usually what the majority voted for. When they go against their citizens, they're dubbed as faithless electors, which comes with a fine for some states. In other words, the electoral system is trash. If I was an elector and voted for the guy whose sole issue was to make the year 3000 the national anthem, and that guy would have more say than you, then that begs the question, how the fuck did this happen? Let's take a quick dive into history. The framers of the Constitution invented the Electoral College out of fear that when in the hands of normal people, the president could easily fall victim to corruption or exercising overreach, which, if you ask me, worked out very well.
But he made clear he won't be following them.
Sitting in the Oval Office behind that beautiful Resolute desk, the great Resolute desk, I think wearing a face mask as I greet presidents, prime ministers, dictators, kings, queens. I don't know. Somehow, I don't see it for myself.
We're kidding, of course. Everyone in the government is out of their goddamn mind. Especially the way they made different rules for the North and South when the Electoral College was created. In baby terms, the South didn't want slaves to vote. They couldn't be counted in the popular vote. That means the Electoral College greatly increased the vote of slaveholders because the population did not decide on a representative government. Even though the Electoral College has changed, it's as problematic back then, and it is still now. The North and South populations were equal, but the South was not bound by allowing their slave population to vote. This means they wouldn't have a say in the popular vote system until Lincoln, and we still use it. Does anyone think this is bonkers? This is literally bonkers. And it's ironic coming from the guy who focuses on battleground states and not densely populated states that are strongholds for a particular party like California or New York. In a grander sense, voter suppression is woven into the fabric of American politics. Hell, look at the infamous 1965 voting rights. A pretty clear progressive policy, if you ask me. And it sought for the end of voter discrimination, like literacy tests, while also forcing states to get federal permission before changing voting laws. Sadly, in 2013, the Supreme Court overturned the latter part of the act. Thus, one of the policy's most important aspects was made more obsolete than the second tap desk in P. Row.
And at least for now, Jake, the bottom line is that these southern states, largely southern states that had these special requirements that the federal government imposed in that 1965 Voting Rights Act, they are no longer going to have to deal with that, at least for the time being, unless Congress takes special action. And as I said, I don't anticipate that special action anytime soon.
The states jumped quickly at the chance of making their own laws. They made people of color wait 45% longer than white voters in 2018. And as a colored person, how dare you? I would speak to your manager if he has proved anything over the last 4 years. He doesn't give a shit about me. The effects of this overturn have been felt in every major election since. Even during the pandemic, voter suppression is at an all-time high.
Against the backdrop of anti-racism protest, we head to Florida, where the coronavirus threatens voter turnout. Activists have been fighting against the state's voter suppression, with lawmakers urging residents to vote by mail and early. Black Americans aren't just rethinking where and when, but how they vote.
Now, one of the most ingenious ways to suppress voters is through gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is the redrawing of districts to help certain parties have more power. It's like if a teacher reorganized their class so they could have all their favorite students sitting in the front. And let me tell you, the kind of redistricting you see is all sorts of fucked up. Just look at this part of Louisiana. Look at how it's drawn. I mean, it's like a really bad game of connect the dots. And if it's too complicated for the back of a CPK kids menu, it's too much for me to handle. Let's take it back to when I stopped eating on the kids menu in 2016. Yes, it was a little late, Mom. It's not my fault. I like to eat chicken nuggets, and chicken nuggets are good. Not only that, but let's revisit Season 1 of Stranger Things, Hamilton's Peak, and even the female Ghostbusters. 2016 was a crazy, wild roller coaster of a year. The Denver Post found that in 2016, multiple battleground states changed the outcome of their local elections through gerrymandering. Why? To hurt people of color. Also in 2016, everyone's second least favorite year, the court said the effort to suppress North Carolina's black vote was carried with almost, quote, surgical precision. Damn. Voter ID laws, voter intimidation, and even more are executed because some people would rather see millions of people not vote than 2 people vote twice. Voter fraud is such a non-issue that making laws to stop it is like making laws to protect penguins in the exotic deserts of Arizona. Both a massive waste of time, but at least one of those graphics can make me smile. Goddamn penguins in their cute little tuxes. I wish I could pull off a suit and tied just as much as one of these little flightless cuties. Another thing that couldn't be pulled off in 2016, a win for Hillary Clinton. It's not too soon. She lost. You know, it's been 4 years, and it was an excellent segue. In 2020, the pandemic has offered a buttload of opportunities to suppress voters. In Florida alone, they determined ballot boxes must be kept securely. But they give local readers the right to determine what secure means. That means maybe I could secure some voters in the shredder. Also, in Florida is America's personal seventh layer of hell, and I stand by that. My uncle lives there, and I don't like him. Hopefully he doesn't see this, holy shit. Voters are receiving threatening emails from Iran posing as the far-right group, the Proud Boys, to vote for Donald Trump or else. Or else what? I might get some goddamn peace and quiet? Give me a break, folks. Voter suppression certainly is not new, but the absolute shitstorm that is the 2010s have opened up many new avenues to explore. For instance, most of us already know the state of Texas has a long history with voter suppression, from government officials fighting to keep voter registration difficult to trying to stop the expansion of mail-in voting. There is no limit to the things that Texas officials have done to overpower their voters. But wait, there's more. Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued an executive order to limit all Texas counties to one mail drop-off location. Not only does that really suck, but it's also just not plausible. As the saying goes, everything is bigger in Texas. Bexar County, where the city of San Antonio is located, has over 4 million residents alone, and one ballot box. Just imagine, you're trying to drop off your ballot box, make an effort to be a good citizen, and you show up only to find that everybody and their mama is doing the exact same thing. Despite this major setback, early voters are still doing what they can do to make their voices heard. Over 34% of registered voters in Texas have already cast their ballots as of October 22nd. So it's obvious that people are trying to do their part. As Texas Monthly so eloquently put it, unlike lupus, voter suppression is curable. Texans have just got to get out there and vote. Make the effort, goddammit. But one thing Texas doesn't have compared to Boston is their love of corporate coffee.
The lines were long and the enthusiasm was high among voters at Fenway Park this weekend.
I wanted to vote at Fenway because we've all been cooped up inside for a little bit, and I got my donkeys, and I'm ready to vote for Joe Biden, but I wish I was voting for Bernie Sanders. But it's a team sport.
Wow, I've just never seen someone so overly enthusiastic to settle for Biden 2020. And if it wasn't for Duncan being around every street corner within the greater Boston area, I don't think anyone in the city would have had the energy to get up and leave their rat-infested apartments to vote. Thanks for the motivation, Dunkies. And to Starbies, you need to step up your election game, man. This woman isn't the only one in Massachusetts who's been enthusiastic about their voting experience. As of October 17th, over 1 million votes have been cast throughout the state, over 5 times as many by this time in 2016. That means almost 1/4 of the state has already cast their ballot. I don't think the people of Massachusetts have been this enthusiastic since the Red Sox became a decent baseball team. So, which side leading the race thus far throughout the country? Well, I know an easy way for us to know. That's right. You guessed it, polls. As we know, polls are 100% guaranteed to be 100% of the time. 100%, no doubt about it. Yes, sir.
Silence in shock. Hillary Clinton has to be in shock as well. But when we saw Al Gore lose, he did a brave thing. In spite of winning the popular vote, he got up and he gave a speech to the country.
So while these numbers shouldn't make any matter conclusive, I still find them incredibly interesting. So please, leave me alone. Of the approximate 14 million return mail-in ballots, registered Democrats have sent in 54.5% compared to the 23.5% by Republicans and 21.5% by voters with no party affiliation. As of now, voters over the age of 50 still make up 75% of the early votes cast. And how is that? Based on from what I've seen from Instagram, the only ones who have voted are college-age students. After all, I've never seen someone over the age of 50 post a story on Instagram with an I voted sticker stuck onto their forehead. Little sus if you ask me, besides the point. No matter what these polls say now, and even just a day before the election, please don't relax. Don't assume anything. Assuming is bad, especially like we did in 2016. Just like the Donkeys lady said, this is a team sport. And just as any team sport goes, we need to fight and never stop fighting until it's over. We don't need another rant about what happened in 2016. The aforementioned electorals were snorting Adderall and cocaine that night. Pro tip, kids, mushrooms have the same effect with less drama. Take all three, baby, and you're flying. Similar to 2016, big-ticket items like climate change and the LGBTQ community are still up for debate. Organizations like the Associated Press and some of the main institutions who've called states in previous elections, although their methods are seeming a little strange this season, the AP has openly said that they won't call the 2020 race if they determine that the margin of vote is at most 0.5, which is great in my humble opinion because we wouldn't want to be wrong in a year that has been so wrong already, right? When back in 2016, more than 40% of the electorates voted early, and I assume those numbers will increase this year due to the pandemic. But let's not get this nihilistic way of thinking deter us from casting our vote. Just as Miss I Got My Donkeys ladies exemplified COVID-19, COVID-19 wouldn't stop her from casting her vote, and since she's a fantastic Bostonian role model, it shouldn't stop you either. There are plenty of other issues on the ballot, and some celebrities like Lil Dicky aren't squandering their platform. Lil Dicky and his Lil Saki had this to say.
So, election. Biden, Trump, two candidates. When I think of the things that matter most to me, first thing on my mind, climate crisis. No-brainer of a thing to care about. If there's no planet, what are we even talking about? There's nothing to even do. There's no planet.
The cast of Hamilton even reunited for a virtual fundraiser for the Biden-Harris campaign on the 16th. And if the entirety of 2020 wasn't enough to prep you for the spooky season, the cast of Hocus Pocus are returning through Zoom for a virtual event on October 30th entitled In Search of the Sanderson Sisters, the Hocus Pocus Halloween Takeover, to raise funds for environmental and social justice with the New York Restoration Project. The event costs $10, and for the price of seeing the witchy trio, that's not a lot. Throw in a hot piece of mail, and I'd pay my entire Emerson tuition, plus the infinite amount of loans I had to take out, just to go. I'll say it, dissecting the electoral process from the outside may make it look like a mess, but that begs the question of what it looks like to someone who spent a lot of time in it. To answer that question, our correspondent Ryan Farrell interviewed Campbell Streeter, an executive director of the student-led organization Every Vote Counts.
Okay, so, I guess first things first, tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What's your whole organization about?
I'm Campbell. I'm the executive director here at Every Vote Counts. We are a student-led, nonpartisan organization dedicated to increasing voter turnout and expanding voter access nationwide. Those are big goals, but important goals. And so to go about that on a day-to-day basis, we support students, chapters, and partners that seek to be hubs of civic engagement on college campuses around the country.
Let me ask you this. In your opinion, voting, is it important?
Absolutely. It is the baseline that our democracy runs on. People are absolutely right to say and feel frustrated that feel like their vote doesn't count, that their vote doesn't matter, that, oh, I'm just one person. There's a lot of people in this country for whom the voting system has not worked for a long time, marginalized communities, disproportionately Black and Brown Americans. But voting provides an opportunity for people to put in place representatives that can implement the change they want to see.
Right, of course. Now, you mentioned that Every Vote Counts is a student-run, nonpartisan organization that helps educate others about the importance of getting out and going to vote. So what do you guys do exactly to register, educate, and motivate voters?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, our high-level goal is increase voter turnout and expand voter access, and we go about that by supporting students, organizing civic engagement efforts on the ground on college campuses around the country. We work with students on more than 50 campuses all over the U.S. In tons of different states. And those students are doing everything you can think of when it comes to civic engagement in the broadest sense of the term on the ground. They're doing, elections and engagement work. So helping people get it registered, navigate the voting system, figure out what IDs they might need depending on the state they're in, organizing walks and buses to the polls, all that kind of stuff. They're also doing civic education work, organizing workshops, bringing speakers to campus. And then they're also, advocating for pro-voter policies, both at the state level and on campus. especially this year with the COVID pandemic going on and campuses in a funky place. When you think about voting on a college campus, the first thing that might pop to mind is, a group of students at a table hollering at other students saying, hey, have you registered? Hey, are you going to vote? And that's not something that could be happening on a lot of campuses right now. And if it is, it's a little bit different than it might usually be, right? You're not in a bustling dining hall where there's hundreds of students walking by. And so the other big thing our students have been really trying to do is leverage a lot of the institutional touch points that exist to contact students.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, for months, I've been hearing all about, mail-in voting, and there's been some controversy with that, but for the most part, it's been proven that it's relatively safe. At this point in the game, though, we have a little less than a week left before the election. Should we be mailing in our votes at this point?
It's a great question. The general answer is, at this point, if you have a mail-in ballot and you have not mailed it back yet, you should be thinking about other ways to get it back in, or being very, very intentional about how you plan to mail that ballot back in. As you said, mail-in balloting got a lot of press all year. It is a safe and secure way to vote. The rates of fraud are very, 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 very small. And it's safe. You're not going to be in line at a polling place or anything like that. That said, it does take time to get a mail-in ballot back. And one of the big problems with mail-in balloting is people not meeting deadlines. And when it comes to returning your ballot, deadlines generally fall into two categories: states that require a ballot to be received by Election Day, and a state that requires a ballot to be postmarked by Election Day. There are specific differences on how many days after it can get there with the postmark or things like that. But we're generally now close enough to the point where if you just throw your ballot in the mail, you risk not getting it there by Election Day. If you really don't have the opportunity to take advantage of your other options to return your ballot, so return it, to a ballot drop box. Some states you can return it to your polling location in person, and in pretty much every state you can return it to your local elections office. So those are 3 in-person return opportunities. If those aren't something you can do and you have a mail-in ballot and you really don't want to go vote in person early or on Election Day and want to call your elections administrators to figure that out, if you're in a state that allows you to make sure your ballot is postmarked before Election Day, you could conceivably take your ballot to the post office, make sure you see them postmark it, and then send it off if you really need to. But generally and overarchingly, if you have a mail-in ballot and haven't returned it yet, you should be thinking about how you can return that in person.
That's a good call. Now, your website has a specific section dedicated to legislative reform. I was wondering on if you could fill us in on what specific reforms Every Vote Counts is pushing for.
Yeah, it's not very specific, but I would say generally, we're supportive of pro-voter policies. There's all kinds of different ones that are, popping up all over the country. Some are more common, things like automatic voter registration, that mean that, anytime you interact with something like the DMV, voter registration becomes an opt-out versus opt-in process. That's a great one, and that one's really gaining popularity all over the country. Some more niche and obscure ones that we find really interesting, things like ranked choice voting. It's actually on the ballot in Massachusetts this fall.
Yes, it is.
And it's a wonderful, interesting, cool, democratic process reform that at its best allows people to, make their voice heard more accurately. You have the opportunity to cast the vote for your first choice, and if that person loses, your second choice can be taken into consideration.
Well, Campbell, I want to say thank you very much once again for joining me today. And yeah, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat, and make sure you vote by November 3rd. Remember, it's not the first day to vote. Election Day is the last day to vote.
Right, of course. All right, well, Campbell, thank you so much once again. And I hope you have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.
Now, Emerson students, seeing as though the spooky season has dawned upon us, I thought it would be fair to share a scary story to tell in the dark. Well, not too dark, because then you at home wouldn't be able to see anything. My skin doesn't work well in unlit lighting, but can we have some mood lighting, please? Thank you kindly, Michaela. Once upon a Halloween night, there was a group of boys who loved to go trick-or-treating, and it was beautiful, it was pure. Every year, They would rush up and down the Boston streets, hollering over each score of candy, door after door. In other words, they were sweaty college kids who dressed up as anime and cartoon characters, but that's neither here nor there. This tradition in the horrid year of 2020 was thwarted by an evil known as COVID-19. Or was it?
We are only 43 days away from Halloween, and pandemic or not, people are planning to celebrate, and the proof? Well, it's in the profits. Candy sales are already up 13% over last year.
That's right. Even during a worldwide pandemic, Americans will do anything in their power to get fatter for free. Even if that means risking their lives. Like the college students in the story, they died. They got COVID, whatever, story's over. So, if you don't find the lesson in that incredibly short story helpful, maybe this will add some context. In our current home state of Massachusetts, COVID cases are currently going up this October. This, of course, means that after a slow downturn in September, we gotta stop upping the ante here again. We need more masks, more sanitation, more overall social distancing. And if we want to make the slight upward trajectory we've been seeing go down even more, we got to do that. However, this, of course, is a problem because Halloween is upon us. Trick-or-treating, parties, costumes. For me, this is the first time I'm not enjoying those festivities, and it's not ideal, but it's important that we do so for everyone's collective health. And besides, my neighbors always used to give me raisins and dots. Kiddos, you're not really missing out on anything. And besides, that bastard Jimmy Kimmel was probably going to tell your parents to eat all your candy anyway.
I'm going to tell you what happened to your candy, Blake. I ate it all. I ate yours too, Alan.
Of course not. Trick-or-treating is possible, but it's going to be different this year. Obviously, got to keep your mask on, and not that creepy horse one that I know you My Chemical Romance fans, students own. Keep a cloth, keep it breathable. Your respiratory system is way more important than looking cool. And if that still doesn't sound like a good idea, there are plenty of alternatives to the average trick-or-treating. Going house to house isn't as sound as it used to be. Give a corn maze a try, or an outdoor haunted house a try, or stay at home and be with your family if you're insane.
I have real concerns if it's really feasible to go house to house and really maintain the social distancing with really excitable kids. And you can do Halloween activities at home, watch a classic Halloween movie with everybody, and have nice Halloween food.
So, with all this in mind, I, Amog Matthews, wish you a safe and festive Halloween and bid you adieu. Or do I? No, I do. The show is over. Have a good night, Boston.